Greetings, everybody. Good afternoon. Okay, I need a little bit more. Good afternoon. All right, there we go. Right, who's here for the first time today? Who's been here with us for the last few days? All right, nice work. Nice to see you all again. So, climate change has been called our generation's existential challenge. And of course, existential challenge means a threat to our very existence. Now, while that may focus the mind, it doesn't mean that the solutions are particularly simple, and nor does it mean that we can focus on climate change without recognizing that both the challenge and the solutions are woven into so many other issues. Can the world really reconcile economic growth with sustainability? Can technology provide the answer at a global scale? And how do we make the energy transition both swift and fair? With COP28 beginning here tomorrow, just down the road, our timing could not be better for this, our second climate and business forum. So for the next hour and a half, the collective brain power of those folks here in the room is going to be put together to identify opportunities and climate transition pathways. We have just the right person to start us off, here to talk about the absolutely critical role of the private sector in the net zero revolution. Please welcome the Chief Commercial Officer of RIM Sustainability, Vivek Aswani.
Oh, that's bright. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I want the best doctors to carry my coffin to demonstrate that in the face of death, even the best doctors in the world have no power to heal. I want the road to be covered with my treasure so that everybody sees that material wealth acquired on earth stays on earth. I want my hands to swing in the wind so that people understand that we come to this world empty-handed and we leave this world empty-handed after the most precious treasure of all is exhausted, and that is time. My name is Vivek Aswani, and I'm an entrepreneur fighting to give the generations I can't see the most important resource of all time. Pretty dramatic, right? Yeah, I wanted to grab your attention. For those that don't know, that was a quote by Alexander the Great, one of the greatest conquerors in the world. And he gathered his generals right before he was going to die and asked them to accomplish these wishes for him. It's amazing how the humility can happen when time is short and the end is near. Well, that's where we are with climate change and the big buzzword around it, net zero. So let me paint the picture for you. 300 parts per million. That is the target level of carbon dioxide we need in the atmosphere. Where are we today? 417 parts per million, and we're growing at a rate faster than the entire history of this planet. We annually emit over 37 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere. We need to halve our global emissions in the next 7 years, and we need to completely get to net zero by 2050. So let's summarize. 300 parts per million, reduce emissions by 50% in 2030, and get to net zero by 2050. Where are we at? In 2022, this may surprise some of you, the only country that is on target to reach its net zero targets is China. Everyone else is falling short. The UK just reneged and pushed back some of their green initiatives. I'll give you an example in developing countries. I grew up in Nigeria. I moved to Nigeria in 1991. We had an installed capacity of 5,000 megawatts that the government provided into the grid. 32 years later, the amount of available capacity in the country, 4,700 megawatts. We've actually lost available capacity in the grid in our country. And what did that force private sector to do? Generate their own power. How? Diesel generators. In Nigeria, we have 50 gigawatts of installed capacity on diesel generation. The question I ask is the public sector really giving us confidence on their strategies to help us reach these goals? In my view, it's the private sector that holds the key to transformative change. I, like many of you, have witnessed the impact of climate change on our world, and I have chosen to redirect my efforts towards sustainability because I believe that businesses can be a force for positive change. Let's start with measurement. The famous saying, you can't manage what you can't measure. How many of you in the audience who run businesses, work for organizations, have done a carbon reporting exercise or understand your carbon emissions? Yeah, I see a few hands out here. That's great, first of all, thank you. But BCG estimates that only 10% of companies have actually done a full comprehensive CO2 reporting. Now imagine you're trying to lose some weight and you have a target weight to reach. Now, how do you get to that weight if you don't know what your weight is today? You don't know how much to exercise, you don't know how much to burn, you don't know how much to lose, what diets to have. You can't start somewhere, you can't reach somewhere unless you know where you're starting from. And that's where the big problem started. So this is where I'm choosing to spend my time. I made the decision to leave a comfort of a family business and build a solution-driven business to tackle these issues. Not only did I see commercial value of engaging and prioritizing sustainability, but I also felt it on a personal level. I'm an active scuba diver. I've been scuba diving for the last 15 years. I have a big passion for it. I enjoy it. And on some of the sites that I had visited to, over a 5 or 10 year period, I saw in my own eyes the depletion of those coral reefs. I saw reefs that were teeming with life now have completely deserted, sort of deserts in the sea. The impact of global climate crisis is having intrinsic impact, not just in businesses, but in everyday life. And the problem with human nature may be that we only act once it's a bit too late. So the key question becomes, how do we navigate this journey to obtain clear metrics? This is where we believe technology and solutions become indispensable. In my entrepreneurial journey, I've witnessed the transformative power of technology in measuring sustainability metrics and emissions, and how this plays an instrumental role in the success of a business. The ideology of RIM sustainability is to democratize sustainability and empower all organizations to be able to make change and drive impact. We marry sustainability expertise with big data, with AI, and with technology, and our solutions can provide the transparency and accuracy needed for businesses to make informed decisions, aligning their operations with the imperative of achieving net zero. One of our core beliefs at RIM Sustainability is that by using technology, we can lower the cost and also increase the transparency for organizations to achieve these goals. Through this process of helping organizations around the world, I've actually come to see a plethora of opportunities for the private sector. First, the internal benefits to the business. Renewable energy is now competitive. You can generate power using solar at a very competitive price to what you would use in fossil fuels. That price is continuing to come down. I've seen electric vehicles become much more apparent within distribution strategies. So in markets like Vietnam, we've seen electric vehicle scooters increase from 2 to 10% without government intervention, because it just makes sense, because the operational cost of electric vehicles is lower than your internal combustion engines. Net zero is also something consumers are looking for. Sustainable businesses are also consumer-driven. Brands are now engaging with their consumers to talk about their sustainability initiatives, and increasingly consumers are more aware and demanding companies to become more sustainable. Then there are sectorial shifts that we need to look at. One is in food and food security. If we continue with the amount of meat that we're consuming today, we will never reach our climate goals. We need to reduce the meat drastically consumption. What's the alternative? Alternative proteins. That's a $1 trillion opportunity to the private sector by 2050, right? And it needs to be there. So that $1 trillion needs to come out. Electrification of homes and offices. In countries like Nigeria, we're seeing the development of solar panels to electrify homes, and we're skipping generations of using grid where people are generating their own electricity using renewable energies where radiation is strong. Sustainable transportation. I mean, the richest man in the world made his wealth on electric vehicles. That should be enough to motivate most of us here in the room in the private sector to start adopting these net zero strategies and start adopting sustainable businesses. The list goes on, and I can continue, but critically, we must move beyond the rhetoric and embrace tangible actions. Sustainability and net zero is no longer an option. It is a necessity for the survival and prosperity of our planet. As entrepreneurs, leaders, let us seize this opportunity to drive positive change, not just for our businesses, but for the world we share. Whether you like it or not, if you are in the private sector, you need to become a leader in net zero and climate change. And the impact of this problem in your business and day-to-day life is inevitable. Together, we can make the net zero revolution a reality and give the most important resource and treasure to the next generation: time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vivek, for reminding us about time and that leadership is such an essential ingredient of progress.